Hi. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. How are we all doing? I cannot believe that we are already so far into December. It is just mind-blowing. And I also want to start by saying that I'm really sorry about last week's tea break mess up. So I did the tea break live and then usually post the video straight away, which I did, but then took it down for a very silly reason, planning to repost it. And then I couldn't repost it for some reason, and I tried many times. And so I'm really sorry for those of you who asked your questions. I know that you weren't the ones who watched live. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about your questions from last week again today so that you can actually hear my answers. And this time I won't take the video down, so you'll actually be able to see it. Ta-da! We live and we learn, don't we? But before I get to the question part, I've got some, general life chit chat, as I always do. So you may have guessed that the slightly big thing happening in my life this past week was the launch of the Divorcée program. Can you believe it? So obviously this is something that, I've been talking to you guys about for, well, not like for ages, but for several weeks. But it's been in my brain for ages. Divorce is something that is quite a life-changing event. And although it certainly by no means is like who you are or defines you, and in fact, that's what the program is about, but it is a life-changing event in a lot of ways. And so I've been wanting to put together this support and this program and this guidance, and I want to walk with women on their divorce journey, because when you have such a life-changing event, you get to choose which direction it kind of changes in. And I want to help you take this life-changing event and turn it into something magical. So personally, I'm not one to believe that everything happens for a reason, but I do believe that nothing goes to waste. And I really want this to be one of those cases where nothing goes to waste. You can learn things from the mess. You can take things from the mess. You can pull these lessons out and turn it into magical stuff. And that is the whole point of this. And I've been wanting to do that for so long. Because, if you've been following along for a while, you know that my life doesn't suck because I got divorced. Far from it. It did for a while. It was really freaking hard. Don't get me wrong, but it really doesn't suck. I really love so much. I love what I've turned my life into. I love how being a single mom has affected my parenting. I honestly, truly think I'm a better parent because I'm a single mom. I think it's given me a chance to go into new relationships in such a better way. Honestly, my second husband is going to be so lucky to have me on the second go around. Sorry, first husband, but second husband's going to get a better version. I think that is just, and it's not just that either. It's just how I approach life and how I live life. It feels so much better now because of what I could extract from all that pain, and because of what I could take from the mess. And that is what I really want to help other people do too, because there's not really, I pieced a lot of this together from lots of different places. Ultimately, I've had coaching from 3-4 different coaches. I've read a ton, and I've pulled all this stuff together, but never have I had kind of dedicated divorce support and going through this. It's all just been this crazy, make it up as I go along, which is great and wonderful and, worked. But by working with a coach, the cool part, and this pretty much is true for all coaches, and working with a coach in general, not just divorce related, but the cool part about working with a coach is that you can fast track time. So you can take all the lessons that took me this long to learn, and you can learn them in this much time instead. So you get to collapse time and fast forward and just learn from what I learned from, but in a more condensed way. And that is the beauty of all of this. So I've been, like I said, I've been wanting to do it. It's been so much fun to do. This whole, like, starting, so obviously you guys know I've been coaching for quite some time now, since, last summer, so like a year and a half. But this is the first, and I've done some free master classes, but this is the first program that I have put together, and it's been such a cool process coming up with what the lessons were going to be, what was going to be in the lessons, recording them, figuring out, like, buying a website, putting it all on there. Like, it took me 2 weeks to buy my own website domain to, like, launching this program. But don't get me wrong, I did not build this from scratch. I didn't do a single bit of coding. I don't know anything about that. It's, kind of a, like, plug and play website where I just, fill in things and move things around and whatever. But still, I did that from scratch, and it was really cool, and also sometimes frustrating, and also can be so easy to get lost in the, like, I'm just going to move these boxes around ever and ever and ever, and then going, wait, hang on, this doesn't need to be perfect, there is no right answer, just get it on there and get it out for the world. And in the creation of this program, there's been so much learning for me and so much more personal growth and things like that. Like, my inner perfectionist wanting to come through and wanting to be like, you can't put it out there yet because you haven't done this, that, or the other thing. Or, at the moment, the way the website stands, I've got the lessons are all up there, and you can buy the doubting package, which is 3 lessons. You can buy the divorcing package, which is 4 lessons. Available for pre-sale is the dating, which will come in January, and that's going to have its own lessons. But what's not on there is the ability to buy the one-to-one coaching with me. So there's 3 levels of support with this. So you can get just the lessons on their own, or you can get a package that has 1 call a month with me of personal individualized support, or you can get the gold package, which has 3 calls a month with me and Voxer support, so voice note support throughout, which really, really is what I needed. I needed that, like, daily support to drop in when shit hits the fan and I don't know what to do here and there. So there's those 3 options of support with this program, but only the first option, only the lessons only are available on the website. For the others, for the individual coaching, you have to send me a message and we'll work that out between us, because I just didn't know how to get that on the website on time. That's harder to do, and if I had waited until I could figure that part out, it still wouldn't be up and ready. You still wouldn't know what the lessons were all about. You still wouldn't be able to buy the lessons themselves. When in reality, getting that part out there and saying, message me, send me an email or send me a message for the individual coaching, that works too. That is a perfectly fine way to do it. But I've had to have these conversations with myself of going, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, all singing, all dancing, because it will just never get launched if I wait for that moment. So there's been that. Then there's obviously been the part about, like, spending the time going into, well, what did I learn and what did I take away and what do I want other people to learn and have access to? I mean, first of all, there's just a ton of stuff. So boiling it down into 3 or 4 lessons to start off with was tricky because there's just so much. This is very much going to be the starting point. Ultimately, I want to have, like, a library of divorce resources where, it's like, how to handle co-parenting at the holidays, how to handle your kids starting school, how to handle, like, I want there to be, like, just this whole library of videos where you're like, I need help with this, and you can go and click on the video and I talk about it. But I had to start somewhere. Excuse me. I had to start somewhere. But so in coming up with a starting point, I had to go back through my own divorce. I had to go back and go, well, what was coming up for me then? What did it feel like? What would I have needed at that time? And unsurprisingly, that brought up some feels. That was not always easy. And although on the one hand, writing the lesson about finding the feel good and, like, the how to bring more pleasure into your life and the benefits of doing that and, like, where to start and, like, the finding the feel goods, that lesson was so much fun to write. And I was like, ooh, buzzing at the end of it because I, like, it floods my body with all that feel good. But the flip side of that was writing the lesson about how to process the big emotions and how to handle the big emotions that come. That one took me a long time to do because my body was then feeling the big emotions. And one of the things that I teach you in that lesson is about sitting with those emotions and not hiding from them and learning how to lean in towards the emotions and letting yourself feel them and that then has power to start to dissipate the feelings, as opposed to if you try and hide from them, they're just going to run the show. So that's one of the lessons. But in doing that, in writing that lesson, I had to take some more time. I had to give that lesson more time and space to come through, because I needed to lean into it. I needed to breathe through it. I needed to just give myself some space, because there was a lot, my divorce had me in a lot of big emotions, and sometimes I still do. And in fact, all of this was happening at the same time as the run up to Thanksgiving, which is tricky for me because my family lives 4,000 miles away. I used to celebrate with my in-laws and now I don't. So Thanksgiving is kind of just me and the girls don't eat most of the food that I cook. And Thanksgiving is all about the food and the family. So without either of those, it falls a bit flat. So I had that going on at the same time as I was trying to write about processing the big feels, the big emotions. And I had to lean into my own work on this rather than just plowing through and forcing myself through. I had to practice what I preach and be my own best student and really just give myself the time and space to let it happen. And then I realized last night I was lovingly laughing at myself because while I was doing that and I was feeling a bit frustrated sometimes with it's taking me so long to get this program out, and this big emotions lesson is taking me forever to get through, and I wish it could just come out faster. And I was being gentle, but those frustrations do come through still. But then I looked at the calendar last night and realized that it actually was 3.5 weeks from me saying, okay, I want to create this program. What's the structure going to even look like? What's this program going to be? To launching it. And 3.5 weeks to create an entire program from scratch and record the modules and build a website and all that is really actually not very long at all. And I think that was a really good analogy for how my divorce felt as well, of when you're in it, it can feel like the slowest slog in the world, like you're wading through treacle, and every day can be such a drain. And I mean, it's the same with having little babies and kids. When you're in the hard stuff, it feels like time just can go in slow motion sometimes. But then when you look back in hindsight, you can go, oh, that was just this little period of my life, wasn't it? When I think about the fact that 3 years ago, in fact, today's the 7th, isn't it? 3 years ago today is when my ex-husband cheated on me. I didn't find out about it for another 3 weeks, but this is when, our marriage had been falling apart well before that, but this was the final event that was the catalyst for it all crashing down, the final Jenga piece being pulled from the tower, if you will. That's actually quite a good analogy. Yeah, our marriage had all the other blocks taken before that, and then that final cheating was the final block. So although it's easy to say that's the reason the tower fell, it wouldn't have fallen if that was the only block that came out. I'm going to use this. Anyway, so that was 3 years ago. And when I think about what I have been through in the past 3 years, I'm like, how the heck is it only 3 years? It feels like that was 10 years ago. So much has happened in that time. It is insane. The pain that I felt, the anguish I've gone through, the growth that I've gone through, the joy that I felt, it's just this insane time warp. And so I think that's another just big thing to take from this, is that when you are in this mess, it feels like surely there's no way out. It's going to last forever. And it really, really, really doesn't. And I don't just mean divorce mess. I mean, whatever state you are in, I totally understand the feeling of oh, and then actually in a blink of an eye, things change. So there you go. There's all of that. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the questions bit. And like I said, I'm going to answer last week's questions since you guys didn't get to see the answers. Or hear the answers. So let me try and remember what they were. So I think the first one was about how it was a work-related question, and it was how I handled it when I had this big project at work that was looming for me at my old job, and just general tips for dealing with overwhelming workload. And So I think in terms of the like how to handle it when I had like this big, massive looming deadline, and I think what I was talking about last week was the fact that to me, a really big key was separating my worth as a human and as an employee from the outcome of this project. So my project was an annual one where this was the 7th year that I'd done this project. And in earlier years, it had totally and completely consumed me. I just got so lost in this project because it felt like everything, like who I was tied up in the outcome of this project. I mean, I didn't put those words on specifically, but that is how I was acting. Was like, if I don't do this, it means I'm a bad person and my boss is going to hate me and I'm not going to be any good at anything. And I had to do this project like to the absolute, it was everything I had, or else I was going to crumble, because what good would I be if I didn't? If I didn't throw every ounce of me into it, then what was the point? And a big difference was in these final years, so in the last 2 to 3 years, don't get me wrong, it still took a lot out of me. And if you've been watching these for over that time period, you'll know that I talked about the project a lot because it took a lot out of me. But the big thing that was different was that I could separate me from the project. And I knew that pouring into myself and keeping myself topped up as much as possible was going to make a massive difference to how I felt and to the outcome of the project. And it did. I can now say that with hindsight, that this year's was the best year that I ever made, and it also was the year that I put I took more time for myself. I didn't have Wednesdays off entirely for my coaching time, but I still took the time I needed for my coaching time. I did Wednesdays differently. I would sometimes go do my corporate job at the cafe, which I would never do on a regular work day. I did things differently to really look after myself and make sure that I kept reminding myself that however the project turned out was not a reflection on whether I am a good person. It does not reflect on whether I am worthy of love or, a good human or anything like that. It just meant I was doing the best I could with the resources I had. I knew that I was doing the best I could. And if something went wrong in the project, it wasn't because I was bad at my job. It wasn't because I, didn't care or was a horrible human or whatever. It was simply because we ran out of resources to do that. And I was really clear with myself and with my bosses that was the case. So I think for me, that was the biggest takeaway, was when you've got this massive work deadline or massive work project, to separate you from the project and to really remind yourself of that as many times as you need to, over and over and over again. And then more generally with work overwhelm, I think it's actually the same answer. It's reminding yourself as many times as you need that you can only do what you can do with the resources you have, that you do not need to pour, when I say the resources you have, that does not mean all 24 hours in the day, because your resources will very quickly dwindle to nothing if you're trying to do that. You need to separate work and workload from yourself. You still need to do the things that you need to do to fill yourself up, to top up your life, set your boundaries and maintain them really strongly. They absolutely, your work life and you are two different things, and maintaining those boundaries, however that looks for you, depending on your job and the work and the rest of your life, but setting boundaries and knowing that you need to top up you first, that your priorities matter the most, and that when you do that, that will then come through in better work. When I started putting myself first, my work got a heck of a lot better. Really ironic. Wish I had known that ages before. Because we all benefited when I put me first. And yeah, would have been nice to know that years ago. But now you know. And see, again, the benefit of working with a coach is that now you can learn what I learned, but faster. So yeah, I think that's the answer to that one. Then, what was the other question? Oh yes, the other question was about how do I feel about misogyny, sexual harassment in the workplace, And I went on a long tangent last week about the patriarchy and how I feel about that, which you can guess is not great. So I will probably do a shortened version of it now. In that, I first of all, as you've probably figured out by now, I am by no means a man hater. I love men. I love love. I was talking earlier about my second husband, and I have every intention of marrying again, and so I do not think men are bad. I do think the patriarchy is bad, and the patriarchy is a system of values and beliefs that affects all of us, men and women, both and non-binary people. We all lose out because of the patriarchy. Like I think the patriarchy is bad for all of us, but also we all perpetuate the patriarchy because it's so ingrained in us. So it is a system of beliefs. It tends to benefit men more. That does not mean that I think that the men are consciously doing it and trying to screw us over. But like I said, it's so ingrained in us, and it does benefit men more, absolutely. And stuff like workplace harassment and misogyny is a very strong symptom of the patriarchy. So the whole idea is that, and in general, people in power want to stay in power. That is almost always the case. And it comes from a place of fear and, that like this, being in this position of power is all that I am. And if I don't have this, then what do I have? And it's this wounded, fearful place of I have to keep my position on top. And to keep my position on top, I have to keep the rest of you down. Think about, I don't know if you guys all played like King of the Mountain when you were little. We used to do it with snow piles where somebody was up at the top of the snow pile and you try and push everybody else down so you keep your spot. That was a very literal interpretation of this. It's like, if I'm at the top, I can only be here if none of you guys are. Because if you get up here, you're going to push me off. So the idea is to keep other people down and small. So if men want to keep their position of power because they want to, that's all right. Good luck with your work call. So if they want to keep their position of power and have all the systems in place that continue to benefit them as men, well, then they need to keep the women down. They need to push us off the snow pile. And pushing us off the snow pile can look like harassment, sexual harassment, keeping us saying that we're stupid or we're only good for secretarial typing jobs. I'm going like a bit back in time, but the point is that this stuff still exists now, but in just different ways. And that if we are small and quiet and in our little boxes, that we won't cause trouble, we won't, threaten their position of power. And if we're busy being occupied by being pissed off that they're, whistling at us as we walk through the office or talking about the length of our skirt instead of the benefit of this report that we just wrote, or if they're, talking over us in a meeting and saying, yeah, great idea, Jeff, I'm glad you came up with that when actually Jane's the one who just said it and everybody ignored that. If we're pissed off about all of that stuff, we're using our energy and our time to fight all of those, insults, rather than actually fully owning our power and being the incredibly magnificent, powerful, magical people that we are. So there's my rant about the patriarchy. But what do you do about it then? So the more practical side of what do you do about it? So I have always been, and I know that this is, everybody has different personalities, but I personally have always been a call out the bullshit kind of person. And I remember I definitely remember 6th grade, so I was about 12-ish. I don't remember before then. But when people would be picking on me, I would call out their bullshit. I would say it loud enough for the teacher to hear. And I'd be like, stop saying that, that's not very nice. Intentionally loud enough that the teacher would come over and be like, what's going on here? And I just wasn't going to let people get away with this. And now I take a more direct approach. So rather than passively aggressively saying it loud enough for the boss to hear, I will call it out. But so I actually had an example at a previous job where somebody more senior than I was, I felt like somebody more senior than I was discriminating against me because I'm a woman and because of my home life situation. And I was not okay with it. So I actually, with the help of my HR support, but I wrote a letter explaining how I felt and all the things that I thought were going wrong and that were discriminatory. And then I sat down the senior person and read it to them. And it was scary, absolutely. And I had people at work who I told I was going to do this who advised against it and said, this is going to ruin your working relationship. I don't think you should do that. It's going to make it so uncomfortable and awkward and you're not going to be able to work together after this. And I just, I don't think that's a great idea. And I took that on board. But ultimately, I decided that for me, I needed to be able to stand in my integrity and know that I did something about this and said it. And I was willing to risk the fact that maybe it would make our work life untenable after this. Maybe it would be too uncomfortable or just, it would ruin the work dynamic that we had going on. And maybe I would have to leave my job as a result. And I was willing to do that because I thought that I needed to say it. I needed to know that I had called out the bullshit. And B, I was really hoping that even if we couldn't work together anymore, it would make a difference in the treatment of the women who took these roles following me. And that was worth it to me as well, was I did not want the same behavior to continue for the women behind me. And actually, what worked out was way better than that. This person took what I said on board. We made some changes. I had to keep reminding several times. I'm not going to be honest, it didn't just change like that. But I could say, remember that conversation that we had? You just did it again. Or remember that conversation? Here's what needs to be different. And things did change. And not only that, but I felt so much respect for myself. This person felt a lot of respect for me that we were able to have this tough conversation. And it made change. So for me, calling out the bullshit is super, super important. It does not, like I said, it was scary. It was really hard for me to do. I had support from my HR team. This is something that if I don't know the exact situation that's going on with this question, but if it's something that you need support from HR or you want to talk to me about more detail, absolutely fine too. But I know that I would not at all go back and change it. Yes, it had a good outcome, but even if it didn't, I still would have had the conversation I had because it needed to be had. So that's how I feel about all of that. I think workplace misogyny and sexual harassment, whether it's overt or subtle, because the other thing I should point out with this story I just told is that it was all subtle stuff. Nobody was whistling at me as I walked through the office. Nobody was saying you can't have that job because you're a woman, or none of it was overt. And everything individually on its own was quite a small thing, but it was the overall picture. So when talking to the senior person, they're going, well, that doesn't mean that, or I didn't mean it that way, or that could be explained away in this sense. And I had to keep saying, no, but step back and look at the overall picture here. And when you put it all together, that's where the problem comes in. So whether what's, going on in your workplace is, I think most of the time the days of the overt sexism is mostly gone, but also not entirely. So that could still be possible, and it wouldn't actually shock me all that much. But chances are it's more subtle is my guess. But just because it is subtle does not mean it's not real. It does not mean it doesn't need bringing up. And in fact, that can be even more insidious than the overt stuff sometimes. So I've got a zero tolerance policy. And I am happy to support you in the same. So I hope all of that was really helpful. I will have this video posted, so if you're watching it means you can see it. Yay! And in terms of, I will be doing the tea break chat. So let's see here. We've got next week. Is next week the last week before Christmas break? So I'm not going to be able to do the tea break chat the final week before Christmas because the girls are off school and will be home with me, and I cannot do a tea break chat while I've got the girls home because it would just be them in here. So I'll give you a heads up when that's coming, but I think it's next week is still on and the week after is off, but I'll let you know. In terms of the Divorcée program, please share it. I'm going to keep saying this until I'm blue in the face, but you don't know who needs it. So You might need it, your friends might need it, it might be some acquaintance that you barely know, but if you share it on your stories, they might go, oh my God, that's exactly what I needed. And you have no idea. Some of your friends you might know are struggling, but also others, a lot more, are going to be struggling and not be talking about it publicly. So if you can just share and share and share so that people can find what they need and know that this is their invitation in to get support, I would be so incredibly grateful. It's, super easy for you to do. It doesn't cost you anything, but means the world to me. So please share. And I should also point out that just because I'm like banging on about the Divorcée program does not mean I only do divorce support. So I absolutely am still here for the wider coaching and all of the stuff I've been talking about for the past year and a half. I can still support you in all of that. So one-to-one coaching is absolutely still available for all the other amazing things that you want to do in your life. Even if you are not getting divorced, I still got you, boo. Don't you worry. So drop me a message if you want to chat about that. And I think that's it. Enjoy all the Christmas magic going around. Remember that it doesn't have to be a crazy stressful time of year. You get to just soak in the magic, and you can downplay Christmas as much as you want, or splash it up, or get rid of the stressful parts. You can say no to invitations, you can say no to gifts, you get to pick and choose what this holiday period looks like for you, okay? Just remember that. And let me know if you have any questions. Okay, love you. Bye.